thanks for the introduction, Philippa. My presentation is probably not going to be as in-depth or motivating as the previous two, but anyway, I'll give it a crack. So obviously, look, I'm just going to be talking about natural capital certification schemes because this is what we've been working with in AgForce and been using my experience to do that. So yeah, my background, wife Kylie and I, we run 5,400 hectares over 3 properties. It's primarily a breeding and backgrouting operation. The main property, Culloden, 4,600 hectares, has 2 carbon farming projects on it. That covers about 3,000 hectares. We were one of the first in sort of in the Burnett, certainly the Burnett region, to go down the carbon farming path. Prior to that, I spent 10 years as a mustering contractor. I then worked for Green Collar as a subcontractor when we started our carbon farming projects in about 2017. I joined the AgForce Landscape Management Committee 2018, now chair of the Young Producers Council. I was heavily involved with the LRF conversations early on. So Carbon Market Institute approached us very early on, and they did the promo videos for the LRF on our property. Ironically, they were not eligible for the LRF because we already had our projects in place. I also sit on the Regen Farmers Mutual Steering Committee, and I just started a small consulting company with some of the landholders because of the void in this space, I suppose you could call it. I probably don't really need to show that slide to you guys because I'm guessing most people understand it, how the current carbon market works. But I've only got a few presentations and I just sort of rehash them. So you know, a quick way to describe the LRF is that out of an ACCU project, you know, you can derive ecosystem services, co-benefits and financial independence. And then that's sort of how I explain ACCUs to 2 producers who want to do them, because I'm very pro ACCU. I do believe in ACCUs. And yeah, a brief rundown on the land fund. I don't actually know what the price per tonne is because I couldn't find, but from who I talked to, a few landholders know that I twisted their arm. You know, it's somewhere between $35 and $55 a tonne. It's interesting that the LRF had a pilot program in the Central West, and they ran a webinar on this, and they found that producers needed to receive at least $50 per tonne to make it worthwhile to meet their co-benefit framework. So, you know, and the current spot market for carbon, well, decent carbon, is 24. So probably $2 higher than you, Rebecca, but one of us will be right. We'll call it 23. And obviously the co-benefit framework that sits around the Land Restoration Fund, and this is sort of where it gets all a bit messy, and I'll talk about this more later. It includes a lot of actions and outcomes that largely fall outside the project areas. So I'll talk a bit more about that later. And yeah, so there is a problem with trees and carbon projects. So, you know, that time I spent as a subcontractor and that, I did learn a lot about methodologies and full cam and how they work. And these are some of the problems that they don't tell the whole story, you know, because they're project area specific. There are major flaws within the methodologies and full cam itself. Fire in full cam is obviously a big problem in vegetation. I know this because I'm pretty sure we're still the only vegetation carbon project in Australia that deliberately burns within the project area. We're certainly the first, and we've burnt about every second year since we've been running. Would have burnt more, but we haven't had the seasons to burn. And I went so far as to get the full cam data back out of Green Collar to trawl through it to see what it actually did to the model. There's also big problems around talked to a lot of landholders with GC and with and AgForce, and you know, everyone's got the same problems. These aren't unique to me. Like landholders have got the same problems. I had a chat to various companies, yes, and full cam, and to the regulator. I talked to him in person at a Auburn carbon farming conference in Albury. A few emails, a few phone calls, and the general consensus was, it is what it is, go back to your farm and shut up. Which I didn't do, obviously. Banks see it as a risk, so this is probably where we are very much at the moment with the AgForce stuff, as we're talking to a lot of banks. I think we've talked to 5 major banks now, and they all sort of look, it's still a risk. And obviously, if you're in the business that I'm in, you've got to balance everything. So this is our solution, to these problems from the AgForce point of view, is we step back from carbon into the natural capital space, because natural capital covers everything. Covers your soils, your air, water quality, all living organisms. But most importantly, very much most importantly, is it covers the agricultural product, because the agricultural product is not synthetic, it is natural, therefore it is natural capital. It forms part of your business and forms part of what you manage. And carbon and biodiversity are just the 2 most important ecosystem services that come out of natural capital at the moment. But agricultural product is also the 3rd, because you get paid for it. And that's where we got to ag care. Why do we need them? Well, as I alluded to before, we need them because the management actions not like they don't occur because of a carbon project. They occur because we choose to do those actions, and the outcomes are not there because we've got an ACCU project. Well, we didn't do the ACCU project and then get these outcomes. It's the other way around. And to get the most out of an ACCU system, you need to sacrifice ACCUs quite regularly. So for ecological purposes, you will burn. For ecological for production purposes, you will burn, or you need to thin trees. So if you've got a system where you reward people for the most ACCUs they receive, obviously people are going to chase that. So use various models of FullCam and replicate that. And show how to get the most ACCUs is you don't burn a project for 25 years. Well, you can imagine what happens if you don't burn any country in central Queensland for 25 years. It'll really be not a very good state at the end of it. Our best natural assets are outside the project areas, but they add the best value to our project. We sell our ACCUs on the sort of the voluntary market to private companies in Australia. We generally derive a premium, and they're marketed in a way that we advertise our other assets. And it's a bit of a legal grey area that by using the ACCU as the multiplier for ecosystem services and co-benefits, the ACCU is only represented by what's in the project area, but the co-benefits and everything else exists outside of that project area. So who owns it, particularly in the current way that carbon companies operate? At the end of the day, yes, I keep telling people to get into pole list. You've still got to manage your beef business. That's our project area. So that's what a carbon project looks like. So that's what I've got to manage on a day-to-day basis. So obviously the light green, you can see down along the creeks. Not sure if you can see my cursor there. That light green is the avoided clearing. The yellow is HIR, human-induced regeneration. Dark green is baseline period forest, where we couldn't get avoided clearing, not because we hadn't cleared it 2 or 3 times before, but because it didn't align with clearing cycles. Not only that, a lot of this dark green, it was more profitable to have it. We've got it set aside because there's probably more opportunity for biodiversity offsets, koala habitat and so forth. A bit of remnant veg there, and the grey area we excluded largely because it's more suited to production. It's a different soil type. So it's about 100 million years younger in soil age. Quickly on Culloden, like biodiversity, we've got common 18 mammals. They're listed there, and probably a couple of other that have been seen. And to, what does that look like? Well, that is a snapshot of animals on Culloden. Now, I would point out that every one of those photos, bar one, was taken outside of our carbon project areas. So, to then use the ACCU as to say, oh, we need to use it as the multiplier, so for your biodiversity tied to the ACCU system. Well, it's very false, because all those animals, except for one, the lizard in the bottom left, every one of those other animals exist outside the project areas on Culloden. I did a quick comparison with the WildNet species list. So most you know that little website you can jump on and download. Our nearest site, just to the east of us, they had 31 mammals. I didn't realise there was 14 bats in our area, but apparently there is. So I never really thought about trying to keep track of our bats, but so I took the bats away and there was 17. So according to WildNet, we have 18 mammals, 17 mammals, not including the bats next door to us, and we have 18, and possibly we might have as many as 20. So, you know, currently I'm managing, you know, more than them essentially for free. Why should consumers pay for ecosystem services to private landholders? Well, they are already, you know, via the LRF, and you know, we obviously LRF's talked a bit about today. There is a few problems with it, you know, that with that 30% take, that most of that $27 million went into private New South Wales-based companies. I'd like to see someone go and explain that at a pub at Charleville, where the Mulga plant, where the Mulga Accused projects have sort of caused a lot of dramas. That 27 million bucks of taxpayers' money just went south of the border. National parks, notorious sinks for money. They're often poorly managed with little connectivity. As anyone knows, if you've done anything in the biodiversity offsets game, connectivity is key. I think there's a fair bit of talk about it in the LRF framework as well. And there's also the problem of current regulations, which have, you know, although they're probably well intentioned, they have not achieved broadacre landscape change, and that would be the VMA, the koala habitat, the blue dots, and now reef regs. Well, the solution, we believe, is obviously AgCare, the model that we've developed, because the LRF is, you know, it's got that co-benefit framework. You know, they're paying a carbon premium, so they don't pay separately for the product. It's just an ACCU price. They say the ACCU is worth X amount, probably 20 bucks, and they add another whatever it is they want to pay for the co-benefit. So another way you could look at that is you're saying they're using the ACCU as a multiplier. They're using the carbon as a multiplier for an entire property, even though the project area might not, probably will never cover the entire property. You know, is there a more cost-effective way to get the same outcome for less cost on a wider scale without impinging farm gate output? Because at the end of the day, we are businesses. We're not charities. We don't have .org. I got to meet a requirement by a bank every year to do X amount, and that's just the reality of it. So that's probably a more of a picture diagram of how I see it all working, the natural capital framework. So if you think back to the start and that simplistic one, we had ACCUs out of it, and then you derive co-benefits and so on. What is key to this diagram is the centre there, is the management actions. And you know, the guys from the Aboriginal Carbon Fund would appreciate this, that it's not about title, it's not about what the class of it is, it's all about what happens on ground. And the most importantly, the ability to backdate those actions, because you don't want to discourage producers who have done the right thing. And I'll give you a quick example of that. When I was subcontracting for Green Collar, I went through the process of explaining him, you know, how baseline period forest, you know, was, you know, measured, and that's 2 metres canopy, 20% height. He had 5,000 hectares of it, and he felt outside of the avoided clearing methodology. He didn't have the clearing cycles lined up, and he was a smart landholder. And he said, well, so the best thing I can do is go chain it. And I said, well, you're not eligible for carbon. So it's exactly what he did. He hooked up 2 dozers and he changed 5,000 hectares, perfectly legal, but he had no environmental option for him. So this is why you need to bring it back to more about management actions rather than just, are you eligible for a product? Is it at risk? Through my leveraging of the position in the YPC, I have been a lot of talking to corporates lately, and I do find a theme that they seem to fit under those 3 headings. They either have a plan, actively looking to engage. They're pretty good, those people to deal with. The ones who don't have a plan, know they need to do something. And then there's still a small proportion of corporates that have no idea. it's quite surprising. There we go.